Hi, welcome to the Simucase student training. I'm Katie Ondo, Editor-in-Chief of Simucase, and I'm here to help you get started. There are multiple benefits of using simulations. We'll go over a few. For one, it gives you the opportunity to practice the knowledge that you've learned in class and apply it to clinical experiences within the simulated scenarios. Simucase offers a safe learning environment with opportunity for repeated practice, so you can complete the simulation as many times as you need and learn from your mistakes as you go. It also provides exposure to low incidence populations, so we try to build simulations that you may not have access to in the clinic so that you can have exposure here within the safe learning environment. And ultimately, we want you to build your confidence. So with the opportunities we're building in the Simucase allow you for repeated practice, and ultimately your confidence can then increase. Within Simucase, there are different types of simulations offered. There are assessment simulations where you can practice completing an evaluation. There are intervention simulations where you're practicing supplying intervention to the client. Part Task Trainer allows you to practice one specific skill. So the skill of administering one standardized assessment, or interpreting a stroboscopy, or completing one specific measurement skill would all be considered a Part Task Trainer. There's also the opportunity to practice administering a screen. And then lastly, there's a separate library for patient videos that gives over 600 plus video clips for you to complete observation hours, as well as have exposure to different diagnoses and disorders. If this is your first time in Simucase, you may have not set up your account yet, so you would want to go to simucase.com, select the red Join Now button. Upon submitting your profile, you want to make sure you identify yourself with the university that you're affiliated with. So you would say yes, that you're a student, and then you can begin typing in the university name, which then pulls into your university. You select the university that you need, the academic level that you're in, and proceed with creating your account. Once you have your account set up, at any point, you can go in and update your account settings. So you would click your account name here in the top right. You can click Edit on the Account Settings button, this little pencil icon. You can then update if your address changes or your university changes, if you switch between schools, as well as if your payment method has changed, you can change that as well. If you want to enable auditory indicators, so if you want sounds to play for positive and negative feedback, you can enable auditory indicators by filling in the checkbox below. You can change your email preferences for how many times correspondences are sent to you as well. You can always reach out to help@simucase.com if you have any questions as you're working through your account settings. When we talk about Simucase, every action within a simulation is scored. So as you work through the clients that you will be working with, every selection that you make, you will either receive positive points for reflective decisions, negative points for a rejected decision, or some selections are acceptable. So you're not either awarded or deducted points for an acceptable action. What we're working to achieve is an overall score of 90% or higher, which is a mastering competency level. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the Simucase platform here to show you what this looks like. Here I am on simucase.com. I'm signed in as an account, so I have an active subscription. I then can search either the simulation library or I can search that patient video library. So real quick, I'll show you what the patient video library looks like. This is where there's over 600 video clips of different clients that are working with clinicians have submitted. They range in duration length, so there's some very short clips, 1 minute or 2 minutes in length, or there's full session clips for the entire session, depending on what your needs may be. You can search by topic area if there's something specific that you're looking for to have exposure to. That again is the Search Videos library. For now, we're going to go to the Search Simulation library. The simulations are where you can earn clinical clock hours. So within the library, I'm already identified as a speech-language pathologist because that is what I selected upon my sign-up. If you needed to look for a different profession, you could select a different profession to filter by. You can then filter by the type of simulation, as I was mentioning before, assessment, intervention, Part Task Trainer, or screen. You can also filter by the topic area if there's a specific coursework that you're trying to meet, the age of the client that you might be evaluating or providing intervention to, the location, and then finally the release date. So if you're looking for something new, if you haven't been in here in a little while, you can always filter by the last 4 months as well. If your faculty member or supervisor has assigned a simulation to you and told you specifically which one to work on, you can also type in the client's name in the search bar and click search. So for today's purposes, I'm going to go ahead and launch Rob. I typed in his name. He comes up in my listing. There are handouts available that would be helpful for you to look at before you get started. If I click handouts, there's then an assessment form that gives me a little bit of information about Rob before I begin the simulation. So I already know his name, his age, who's referring him, and a brief description of how he has been referred. After reviewing the handouts, we can go ahead and launch the simulation. You are given 2 modes to work with. Your faculty member should be instructing you which mode to work in. We highly encourage learning mode, which provides feedback throughout the simulation. So if you're looking to earn clinical clock hours, learning mode would be of the most benefit to you. So I'm going to go ahead and start in learning mode. Once I'm in learning mode, we can review the platform to familiarize ourselves with what is included. There are different areas here that we're going to work through, as well as a show clipboard button. So I'm going to go ahead and display the clipboard, which then saves all of the information that I do within the simulation. At any point, I can save and exit if I need to step out for a bit. I can then resume, and once I'm ready, I can submit my simulation to see my final performance. Within the case history section, we will meet our client and be able to collect a case history. So we're going to go ahead and ask Rob why he is here today.
My most upsetting one is the fact that I seem to be losing more of my, or have lost a lot of my volume and tone and sound in my voice, and that's frustrating for me. Also, I'm not able to dress as easily as I used to. I'm a little unsteady at times. When I get up in the mornings, I sometimes lose my balance if I don't stand there for a few seconds to get my balance and then begin to walk. Everyday tasks are much slower for me. That's a little frustrating. It's all frustrating because I'm still trying to learn the disease. And I'm finding out it's a lot more than I would have thought it initially it was and was told it was by friends and people that knew me.
So that was an answer from Rob for why he's here today. He gives a lot of information that you as the evaluating clinician want to make sure you're listening to. So this is treated just as if you're working with a client in the clinic. You ask a question, he provides the response, you listen to the response with active listening strategies to then know which questions you want to continue asking. You may have noticed when I first asked that question, a green positive feedback came through saying I was on the right track, and that was a positive decision. So I'm going to ask a few more very quickly just so you can see what that positive feedback looks like.
About 8 months ago,
Again, there's the green message coming in.
I'm enjoying that. I mean, it's going real well. I'm learning.
I'm going to pause Rob there. If we happen to make a mistake, so if we ask a question that would not be recommended for Rob, we will have a red redirect message that shows. There are multiple reasons why a question may be considered incorrect or rejected. If it's inappropriate for the client referral, if it's insensitive, or if it's redundant. So I'm going to show you what this red redirect message looks like.
In what sense do you mean? I'm not.
So we asked Rob why he doesn't look like he has Parkinson's. That question would be very insensitive to ask the client. The red redirect message appeared at the top telling us that was not a positive decision, and our progress meter emptied some based on the negative action that we did. I mentioned before that you can also have a question that's redundant. So if we ask Rob how long he's been experiencing difficulties, he gives a very long answer that also includes his symptoms of when he first started experiencing them. So the answer provided covers the question, when we wouldn't want to then ask the second question because it would in fact be redundant and not a good use of our time. So when we ask the first one,
we're almost
we
close
get positive
to
feedback.
Strep.
But when we ask the redundant question,
We're almost close.
We get the feedback saying this question is redundant. And again, we lose points because that was considered a redundant question. If we would ask Rob, who is an adult who was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's, prenatal and birth questions, those would be irrelevant for his case because it's not of importance at this point in the diagnostic process. Along the same format, when we're looking at collaborators, we want to determine which collaborators are relevant to the simulation and critical for us to be able to complete our evaluation. There are collaborators built in here that do not know Rob and are unfamiliar with his case and therefore would not be recommended for us to consult with. We also want to make sure when we're collaborating that if a collaborator sends a report to the clipboard that we read that report in its entirety. So I'm going to go ahead and call the neurologist.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Johnstone, Rob's neurologist. I sent his report to your clipboard.
So the neurologist mentions that he sends the report to the clipboard. Again, I had already opened my clipboard so I can see it here, but if we happen to not have opened it, we would need to hit that Show Clipboard button. We would then scroll in the clipboard to where the collaborator section is, and we'll see the PDF report here of the Rob Neurologist report. We'd want to open this report and review this report in its entirety. This is really important because there's information in the collaborator report that you will then need in the future when you're reporting the diagnoses. So we're reporting all previously identified medical concerns as well as diagnoses that you're finding within your evaluation. Moving on to the hypothesis section, this is where you get to identify any problems that have already been pre-stated in the case history in the collaborator section. So you can take a moment to compile anything that's Rob's reported or other collaborators have mentioned, and then what your hypothesis is for what you're presuming may be occurring and therefore what you want to proceed with within your assessment process. This can be done by typing in your thoughts and then hitting save. You can add more than one if there is more than one item that you want to add within the hypotheses. Again, hitting save upon completion. Moving on to the assessment section, we want to look through the list of assessments in order to figure out which assessments would be relevant and most beneficial for you to administer to Rob during his time of his evaluation. You can click the Instructions tab here to look at all of the assessments by clicking the Generate a PDF of all assessments if you want to have an overview of everything that's a possibility within this simulation. You can then select which assessments you would want to administer. When working through, if we decide to do an acoustic assessment with Rob, we can administer and play the response.
Take a deep breath and hold out an ah for as long as you can.
Assessment results are added below the client window as well within the clipboard. So if we scroll in the clipboard to the assessment section, we can see the assessment that we are working in with some results provided in the clipboard as well. You would then continue through working through all of the slides provided to have as much information as needed before making your diagnoses. There are, of course, multiple assessments in here that you would need to complete with Rob based on all the information provided in the case history in the collaborator section and based on the referral. If you mistakenly select an assessment that would be considered incorrect, I will show you what this looks like. So Rob's referred with his recent diagnosis of Parkinson's. He does not have a history of aphasia or having a stroke. So if we opted to give the BASA, that would be an incorrect selection. If we administer, we're given again that red redirect message saying it was not recommended for the referral or the client purposes. We are then not supplied with results because it was not an appropriate assessment to be given. That information does save on your clipboard. So that decision is final at that point. You cannot undo it unless you submit the case and start over. In the diagnosis section, you can also generate a PDF here if you're looking to see all the diagnoses that are possible within the sections, or you can click on the individual sections to see which diagnoses you'd want to report on. Again, it's important to remember that you're supplying diagnoses based on your evaluation as well as any previously identified diagnoses that have already been reported. Last but not least, when making a recommendation, you want to read through the options provided and find the most appropriate one that would be recommended for Rob based on the results of your evaluation. You then have the option to type in long-term and short-term goals. You can add as many goals as needed and save. All of your decisions within the simulation are saved, so everything's being saved in the clipboard. When we go ahead and submit, if we are confident with our decisions, we can submit the simulation. The sections that we work through and saved entries in then have an overall score with an overall competency score. Of course, we did not do so well here with the 5%, but we'd be working to achieve that 90% or higher in that mastering competency range. So we would want to restart at this point. You do have your final report here that you can link to. It shows every selection that you made. Anything in error is listed in red, so you know which ones you want to improve upon your next restart. This final report is also available on your transcript. So you can view your transcript on this final report page, as well as if we go back to the search simulation page. So if we go back to where you start, you can find your transcripts right above your login information. So your transcripts are always available to you. Since I've only worked on one simulation, I only have the one listed, but if you do multiple simulated clients, they would all be listed in order. Your final report is then listed here. If I then do Rob 4 more times, my listing would then have 5 final reports. So as many times if I've submitted him, my report would be available for your review. It is important for you to show your work. So if you are working with a faculty member or a clinical supervisor who's looking to award clock hours for you, you have to submit your attempts in order for them to see the time that you've spent working with a simulated client. You do get quicker at this as you go, but every submission attempt then supports the amount of time that we're awarding for clinical clock hour purposes. So every time you submit, that information is available to the faculty. They can see the progress that you're making, which again is really important to show. They want to see mistakes so that they know how to help you and guide you to get you where you need to be. We just got done looking at the assessment simulation. There's also intervention where you're practicing completing intervention. And then real quick, I'm going to show you a part-task trainer. So this again is looking at one specific skill. So if we want to practice the skill of administering the Western aphasia battery, we can launch the simulation. Again, we're going to recommend using learning mode. Once loading the simulation, we have a similar design, but some things are slightly different. So rather than doing a full case history, again, the purpose of this simulation is to practice administering the WOB. So there's a brief overview.
I was here a couple months ago, and I came back for some more testing.
So Larry's introducing himself, saying he has been here before. So he had a previous evaluation, and now he's back for the Western aphasia battery. There's a limited case history interview, again, because we're looking to practice the skill of administering the WOB. We have a manual section that gives you a record form as well as an abbreviated version of the examiner's manual. So again, we'd want to show the clipboard. If we click the examiner's manual.
Thank you for referring to the manual. It is recommended that you read the manual for complete administration directions before administering the test. A portion of the manual was sent to your clipboard for review.
So abbreviated version is included here. It is listed in your clipboard. So there's a link here. You want to click the examiner's manual. It's imperative that you read through the manual in order to know how to complete the test administration as well as how to score. So all of the information needed for the simulation is supplied within that examiner's manual. Again, if you did not have the clipboard open, you click Show Clipboard, scroll to that manual section where the link is provided. Within the screening and assessment section, we would then begin administration. So this is the part 2 of the WOB. So if we're looking at the reading comprehension of sentences subtest, we could then go ahead and administer. And Larry will complete this.
Read this sentence and point to the missing word. Choose the best word from these.
Leaves.
So for the trial,
here's the next one.
Leaves. will answer correct.
Oh,
So that's
the
okay. Let me give you the directions again. Read this sentence and point to the missing word. Choose the best word from these.
The rain is wet.
Which is the right word? Point to it.
So we would continue on with the subtest administration, scoring as you go, and then awarding the score value based on the response if it's correct or incorrect. If at any point you have a feedback option, again, if you're in learning mode, that gives you insight into if you're on the right track with the decisions that you're making. Again, your progress meters fill in as you work through the subtest administrations. You would then, at the completion, come up with your overall quotient scores or your standard scores and percentile rank, depending on which standardized test you're working through, and then select the most appropriate summary statement based on the performance and the completion of the test. So that is an example of a part task trainer. Thinking about using simulations, there are 3 steps. So your faculty member or clinical supervisor will be working with you on pre-briefing you, so it's telling you which simulations you're going to be working on, giving you a little bit of information to help you get going. They are available for feedback. So learning mode gives you feedback in the simulation. You also have a clinical supervisor that you're working with that can give you feedback and assistance if you're getting stuck while working in the simulation. And then lastly, there will be a debrief that occurs. So this debrief is a discussion with your supervisor. It can be done individually or in a group format, answering any questions that you might have and helping you use this simulated experience so that you can then benefit from it and use it with other cases that you may see in the future. Some tips here that can help you get started. Again, it's important that you listen to the client responses as well as the caregiver and collaborators and all the information that they're providing you in the simulation. The information they're giving you is necessary for the rest of your simulation to be successful. You're going to lose points, like we said, for asking redundant questions as well as administering the same types of assessments to one specific client. So choose your information wisely so that you're using your time wisely. When providing intervention, you want to consider the age of the client and activities and interests that would keep your client engaged. Simucase runs on an internet connection, so you want to make sure you have a strong connection. If your internet connection is slow, when you're hitting submit, please give the page a moment to catch up. Do not close out of your browser right away. We want to make sure it successfully saves your information upon save and exit. As I mentioned before, you have access to all of your transcripts. So use the information that you've done with your previous submissions to help you and learn as you go. So you'll know what mistakes you've made and you can improve upon that with your next attempt. And then lastly, slow down. So if you're clicking, it's hard to know where the feedback's coming in and what's positive or negative feedback. Listen to the response, take the information that they're giving you and help it guide your next decision that you're going to make. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to help@simucase.com. I want to thank you for taking the time to complete this training, and please let us know how we can help. Have a great day.